Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how understanding abstract art will make you a better realistic painter, if not a true master painter. And I'm not exaggerating here. I will give you some hands-on examples that you can use in your own art that will help bring your paintings onto the next level. But why abstract art, you might ask now? I want to learn how to paint realistically. Well, hear me out on this. I thought the same when I was younger. In fact, I disliked abstract art with a passion. Especially modern art I couldn't stand at all. Not only did I think it was hideous and boring, in my opinion it was simply lazy. I never understood why someone would put their time and energy into creating something that ugly if they could make a beautiful masterpiece instead, like I saw in museums and books. Therefore, abstract art was a genre of art I never looked at ever. I only wanted to paint realism, and I turned my back on abstract and modern art for the next 10-ish years of my art career. I'm taking a wild guess here that there might be a few artists that think that way too. So let me present you a different point of view today. After having painted probably hundreds of realistic portraits over the past years, I noticed that there would always be parts in my paintings that looked not so great, no matter how accurate I painted them, like leaves, hair, or fabric. But whenever I didn't put much effort into painting them and just painted them in a few brushstrokes, the more simplified and abstract style they were painted in now suddenly looked so much better. Why was that? After having analyzed my paintings, I figured out whenever I had a very messy reference photo, it would always look better when I painted it more loosely, leaving out all the nonsensical details of the photo. By breaking up and simplifying unflattering shapes, I could create new shapes that looked way better than the ones my reference photo provided me with. And once I discovered that, I started to apply more abstractions to my paintings, while developing a whole new appreciation for abstract art that I didn't have before. From my experience, abstract elements work best where your reference is very messy to begin with. Flowers, leaves, fabric, and hair are prime examples for that. In the painting you see me creating here in the video, I didn't even bother painting the leaves at all, or painting the fabric realistically. The reference photo looks horrible and messy in these areas, and I absolutely didn't want to recreate that in my painting. So I didn't. And the result can speak for itself. By the way, I am currently working on a tutorial series about this very painting, in which I will cover every part of it, starting with the big tiger portrait in the front. If you like to watch the tutorial, join me on Patreon for a small amount per month. Simply follow the link in the video description. Now, after having turned former hideous, messy parts of my painting into handsome abstract areas, I realized that I could also implement these techniques on the more realistic areas in my painting, like faces. That was exciting. Let me show it to you. These two paintings have the same subject, a portrait. I painted the left one in the most realistic way possible, trying to catch every little detail of the portrait. I still love it. It's really cute and the skin looks very soft as well. But now in this painting, I didn't focus on painting every little detail of the skin, nor was I interested in getting all the shadows and every value right. Instead, I wanted to paint the portrait as quickly as possible, yet render it well at the same time. And the result is an interesting blend between abstract areas and fine color pencil work. The added element of abstraction gave the painting something more than having it painted just like the photograph. It looked so much more interesting than the photo. I was surprised. And if you ask me, I prefer the right painting over the left one. Now let me show you some more examples. Here are some of my Egyptian-inspired artworks. On the left, I painted the skin very soft and evenly, but the right portrait has many abstract elements in it, like the little water droplets or the sharp edges around the highlights on the cheeks, the shadow on the jawline, and the opaque hair strands, not to mention the thick highlights on her headdress. These deliberately placed elements add a factor of randomness to the painting, which confuses the brain because the brain doesn't understand why the thing that it looks at looks realistic because it has so many messy elements in it. It's a sort of cognitive dissonance where your eyes move from recognizing the abstract elements to recognizing the realistic illusion at the same time. If you can achieve this in your art, it's a huge step and it will elevate your art into a whole new dimension. But to be honest, it's not so easy as it might look. There are areas where I know when to use abstractions, like the cheekbone highlight, for example, or the highlights on the jewelry, like the headpiece of the right portrait. But there are infinite ways to add abstract elements to your composition, and the discovery and learning process never stops. Let me show you a different way how to apply abstractions when you paint skin. With this painting, I took a different approach. I call it what to do when I mess up. I discovered this technique because I desperately wanted to save my painting. As you can see, the skin looks entirely different than in my other watercolor paintings. It's very opaque here. This is because I used gouache paints here. I placed multiple layers of gouache on top of each other with a frazzled brush. This way I achieved these little strokes that look like cross-hatching. I added layers on top of layers, which took me a few hours to be honest with you, until I achieved a pattern made out of turquoises, pinks, yellows and reds that I found satisfying enough. Since I did this, it's now my go-to strategy for every watercolor painting that goes wrong. And that happens more often than you would think. Now, do you see how abstract this painting is compared to the one I showed you earlier? I also added deliberate contour lines on parts of the face to quote-unquote remove realism. And in my opinion, it's far more interesting to look at than some of my older paintings. Going through this discovery process of recognizing abstract elements and trying to implement them myself, I learned that the beauty that we can find in abstract art cannot be recreated in the realistic art style at all, because it can only mimic a photo or reality itself. Hence, the realistic style works best if you have a beautiful reference photo to begin with. If you don't have that, you're kinda screwed. But if you are able to implement abstractions in your art, you have a powerful tool in your toolbox, which can help you working around shitty reference photos. It takes a whole new mindset to make something look not realistic though. You have to unlearn your realistic skills while learning how to incorporate new abstract elements at the same time. If you can do both though, you are now in the position to decide how much abstractions you would like to have in your painting and how much realism. If you figure that out, and I mean by that what looks aesthetically pleasing beyond the limitations of realism, you will become a true master. And that is my goal for my next paintings. And I hope I could inspire you to do the same maybe, or share your opinions on abstract art or abstract elements. Do you like it or do you hate it? Let me know in the comment section. And don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. See you in the next one. Bye bye!